It's that time again. We're talking Carolina Panthers football on the Our Lads Football Network, and that means Rashad Beard is back. Rashad, man, I've got our viewers over the past few weeks, especially when I put out some Carolina content recently, and they're wondering where you were. Where are you? Because I said,
Yeah.
he's coming. He'll be here soon.
Yeah, just been really busy. A lot of stuff going on. So yeah, we finally had the time to kind of make it happen. So yeah,
Yes.
we're back. It seems like every time we link up, it's something crazy to talk about. And
Yeah.
obviously, a couple days ago, some big news happened in Carolina country. So it's time to talk about it.
Yes, and when we did a early team needs report with Dave Syvertson from Our Lads, and when we were going over that, I think it was when I was talking to him, and I also talked about it with Mark Lawrence, who does the shows with me all season, the NFL shows, and we were talking about the drama as far as Wilkes being a black coach is not getting the recognition, and I was and we'll get into my feelings and stuff, but the whole point was well, you know what, I want to hear what Rashad has to say about it, because
Yeah.
I'm not black. Rashad is. Not only
Yeah.
is Rashad black, but he's also a Carolina fan, so
Yeah.
he's going to have a lot better of an understanding, and I will go with his judgment as well as how he feels about the subject. So, because Frank Reich, in my opinion, I mean, you couldn't have picked a better outside candidate, and that's why I think it makes it even more interesting. And it makes it a little bit more debatable about, well, did they really do the right thing? So let me ask you, first of all, what did you feel about Wilkes and his job performance, and whether or not you thought he was going to have an opportunity to keep the job?
I appreciate you allowing me to kind of address this, but I have a really different opinion on it, because, and I may not go in this. There's a lot more people that feel opposite the way I feel, but I feel like Wilkes did an amazing job. 6-6. He completely flipped what was a pretty bad coaching job by Matt Rule. And I think I've come up on this show, and I do a lot of shows. I don't remember where I said this, but I've always said that this Carolina Panthers team had the talent. It was not a talent issue. It was a coaching issue. Matt Rule was the problem.
Yes.
And once you got rid of Matt Rule, you got a competent coach here in Steve Wilks. He flipped it around. So I always thought the team had some solid talent, at least something to work with. And so I think Wilkes did a really good job considering the circumstances. But at the same time, there were some holes, right? We got destroyed by the AFC South, right? AFC. It's AFC North. Wherever the Bengals and I can't remember their North. My apologies. So the Bengals, the Ravens, they all destroyed us. That's a tough division. They all destroyed us. And so when you can't beat those type of teams, right? You can't get over that hump. We got swept by that entire division. The entire division beat us. And so when you can't beat those teams, and then you have an opportunity, even with all that said, you have an opportunity to go out and win against the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Yes.
When we were up, we were controlling the game, and we somehow let that game slip out of our hands. To me, that was the dagger. I think you don't win that game. If you win that game and get us to the playoffs, I think that changes the entire conversation. Do I think he would have gotten the job? Probably. I think he would have been more likely to get the job if he won that game. And I know it's difficult to one game, but that means a lot. That one game, you put this team in the playoffs, is a completely different conversation. And we were right there in it. We were winning the game, and we essentially got outcoached. Essentially, I would say. You were playing scared. You didn't go for it on fourth down. And that's essentially the crux of being a defensive-minded coach. You play conservative, and this is why I've always been on board with getting an offensive mind. So to address the second part of your question, do I think Wilkes deserved a shot at the job? Absolutely. He absolutely deserved a shot at the job. But I think two things can be true. I also think Frank Reich was the right person for this job. I think he was the better head coach. And if you ask anybody around the league to rank the coaches in the NFC South right now, rank the coaches, and I would you'd be far pressed to find a better coach than Frank Reich
in
NFC
right.
South right now.
He should be at the top. Yep.
And then ask yourself the same question with Wilkes at the helm. Do you come up with the same result? No. The answer is probably debatable amongst
at the best.
Couple of guys.
Correct.
Exactly. So all that aside, listen, I understand. I get it. The NFL does have an issue with black coaches and them getting the opportunities. I get that, and I agree with it. There's no doubt. The evidence is there. The Rooney Rule is. I get what they're trying to do, but it's not. It's not working, right? It doesn't work. It's not an effective way. You're forcing these guys to get these sham interviews. Yeah. And they're turning them down. Like, these guys are getting smarter. They're not like, for instance, D'Amico Ryans. He didn't interview here. He declined the interview. We had a couple of guys decline interviews because they knew they were Rooney Rule interviews. Yep. And those guys, and I get it. Don't waste my time. Don't waste your time. If you don't want it, you don't want me. Cool. Like, so I think it's doing a little bit of a disservice to those guys. But at the end of the day, for the Carolina Panthers, I think it was the right hire. Although I would say, and I got to be honest, because I've said this on my shows as well, I don't think Reich was in my top guys to hire. Okay. I was feeling more of I'm more of a Stetchen, Brian Johnson guy. Those are the guys I wanted because I wanted a younger offensive mind. But at the same time, I'm not mad at Reich because I do think the Colts, I think they messed up. I really do. I think getting rid of Reich was not a good thing for them, and it's proven because they brought in a new guy in Saturday, and they were still they were just as bad, right? So to them, they have the opposite issue of the Carolina Panthers. They had a personnel / execution issue, right? We had a coaching issue. So now I think you're going to see with Reich here, I think he has a talented roster here in Carolina, and I think we're going to be able to flip it really, really quick.
Yeah, well, tell me about we'll get into the roster in a second because obviously that's one of the main reasons I have you on anyway. But okay, so how about the fan base? Because you said that you started it off by saying that you're in the minority. So does that mean that most of the fans, what would you say would be 60-40, 70-30, that they would prefer Wilkes be the head coach?
I don't know that it's 60. I think there is it's hard to put a number on it. I think the majority of the fan base is okay with Reich.
Is that because it's Reich?
I would say because
it's Reich.
I think the press conference did a lot. So he just had his press conference yesterday. Okay. I think what he said in that press conference it went a long way on the messaging and kind of things he said. I think that went a long way to kind of changing some folks' mind. But when I say I was in the minority, I think I was in the minority of African American people who think that Wilkes, should have gotten it because I think we got the right guy. But I think a lot of people that are black would probably think that Wilkes deserved that job. And so that's when I said, when I'm in the minority, that's where I'm in the minority. But I think the bulk of the fan base is happy with Reich. Yeah.
And as well they should be. That was a good hire because I was looking. Speaking of the Colts, I was looking at their list of coaching candidates, and I'm like, look what could have happened. I mean, wow. And matter of fact, if I was the Colts, I would have interviewed Wilkes. Because I would prefer to actually have Wilkes and some of the guys that they're interviewing. I mean, they might seriously hire Jeff Saturday. So, yeah.
I think Wilkes should get a job somewhere, but I think obviously that lawsuit, him being tied to the lawsuit with Flores, I think that's a lot of coaches and a lot of teams are staying away from him, which is unfortunate. But it's just a reality. We got to keep it a buck. I always, I never lie to anybody, but that's the reality, right? Wilkes is deserving of a job somewhere, but he's not going to get it because
I think you're right.
Yeah, that's just my opinion.
I could see that completely being an issue. Okay, so let's talk about the roster. And, so you believe, and we talked about this last season, beginning of the season, that the roster is headed in the right direction. And what was the most disappointing thing about the roster that you thought it was going to be better in these areas and it just didn't work out?
That's tough because I think that a lot of it played out the way I expected. I would say that probably the most disappointing would be some of the. It's tough to say that because after Rule left, things did flip around. I would say let's talk about the Wilkes era of that because I think that's where it really starts, right? What happened prior to Wilkes, to me, I always do this. We call it the Men in Black thing. We always take the Men in Black buzzer and just fade it out because that didn't happen. Matt Rule did not exist. That whole thing didn't happen. So I'll start from the Wilkes perspective. Once Wilkes became the head coach, I would say the defense was a little bit disappointing. The secondary, because Wilkes is a secondary coach, boy, we had a lot of miscommunications and a lot of things went bad in the secondary. Obviously, J.C. Horn going down towards the end of the season, that didn't help. But guys like C.J. Henderson, man, who I really like, I don't want to give up on him, but he is struggling mightily right now. And a lot of the Panthers fan base does not want him around. So I would say the secondary is probably the most disappointing. With guys like Jeremy Chinn, he has not been, man, that first year was great. Ever since that rookie season, it has not been good for him. He did get hurt early in the season, had some injuries, but it has not been good for him. So I think the secondary is the most disappointing. We got to get better there. Whether it's a move Jeremy Chinn from safety to linebacker, something's got to give there. Something's got to give. He's a better player than what he's been playing.
No question. Is that, do you think that he is just because of how good he and how many, whether you call it intangibles or just flexibility, that you can use him in all different variety of coverages? Is it one of those things where, look, relax, let's just, instead of moving him around and all these other different schemes, why don't you just let him play here and maybe he can perfect that specific position for your defense? Do you think that's possibly something that's going on, where maybe his head's spinning a little bit, where he's asked to do too much?
I don't know, because there's guys out there successfully doing it. I mean, Jeremy Chinn, when you look at him, Derwin James, right? At the high end.
Okay.
Derwin James style player. So there's guys out there successfully, moving around and being used in multiple positions. I think, I got to be honest with you, and this week we give that guy Matt Rule a lot of hell, but I got to be honest. I think Phil Snow is the one that had him unlocked. I think Phil Snow, the defensive coordinator that's tied to Matt Rule, he unlocked Jeremy Chinn. I think he's the one that was key to Jeremy Chinn's success, and we got to keep it. We got to keep it a buck. When Wilkes and those guys came in, they said, "Hey, Jeremy Chinn is a safety, and we're gonna make him a safety." And so I think he went from jack of all trades to moving around, playing safety in the box, out of the box, to being a safety. And now we're like, all right, maybe this isn't so. And that's a Wilkes call, because I remember the press conference when Wilkes said that he is a safety. I want him to play a safety, and
that didn't work out.
That wasn't the right thing.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not playing as well as he was under Phil Snow in that and playing jack of all trades role.
Okay. The defensive coordinator position, has that been hired yet, by the way?
Not yet.
Okay.
So we are looking at a lot of guys. I don't know. None of our coordinators are set. We're gonna have to see. Your guess is as good as mine right now. I have no idea. But I will say with Reich, one thing he said during his introductory press conference was, "Hey, we got a top 10 caliber defense here. Like, with the personnel wise, we have a top 10 caliber players." And so it's, a lot of people talk about the offensive versus defensive minded coaches, but for an offensive minded coach to come out and say, "Hey, the defense is the best part of this team right now," that's telling. And also, I'll add, his Colts defenses were really good.
Sure.
He was 3 out of his 4.5 years with the Colts. He had a top 15 defense.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think the defense is going to be taken care of. I don't know who's going to be the D coordinator. We swung for Vic Fangio, and I believe he's probably, I know Miami. I know it's not locked in. It's not locked in yet. I think he's kind of wants to go to San Francisco. And who wouldn't want to go to San Francisco? And by the way, Steve Wilks is interviewing for the San Francisco defensive coordinator job. So hopefully he gets that, because I mean, that's what, there's no better defensive coordinator job than the San Francisco 49ers job. So that's who we wanted. And so I appreciate them swinging for the fences on the defensive coordinator. A couple of guys, Elberflus, there's a lot of guys that he could go out there and get that could be solid. Gus
Bradley?
Yeah, Gus Bradley, I think, was his defensive coordinator with the Colts. So there's a couple of guys I'd be okay with him bringing in.
Well, I mean, like you said, I mean, his defensive coordinator became a head coach. So and then Gus Bradley came on board. So yeah, he'll find someone. And there was the question asked whether or not he was looking for a specific scheme coach, like a fourth, because the team right now is a 4-3 team. So do you believe the personnel needs to continue to run a 4-3?
I actually think we're better suited for a 3-4 than a 4-3.
Okay.
But it's always multiple. I mean, you're going to play
True.
a different, depending on, what team you're playing, there's going to be multiple schemes out there. So I'm not going to lock us into a 3-4 or 4-3. But I like Brian Burns standing up, man. I think he's a stand-up outside linebacker. I think that's where he would feast. But I don't think we have the interior dogs to do that. So we've got Derek Brown, but Ioannidis, YGM, Yitugos Matos, those guys. Yeah, Ioannidis is okay, but YGM is he's very up and down. Yeah. It's kind of situational style player. So
yeah, I have defensive tackle as one of the needs already, and that's on a 4-3. So yeah, and we know how important it is in either scheme, but especially you have to find a nose tackle. So all right. So by the way, Chinn, where do you think what position does his skill set best serve moving forward? Like what role?
I think he needs to play everywhere, but a lot of people want him to move to linebacker, outside linebacker, and I think he has to get a little bit bigger, weight wise. He's 6'3", 220, 225 or something like that. I think he's got to bulk up a little bit to take that punishment for a linebacker. But I don't know, man. I don't know where you're gonna throw him. I think he needs to play multiple. Wherever nickel, big nickel, just throw him in there, line him up against the tight ends. He can play coverage, he can play safety. You can put him everywhere. So I don't want to box him in. I think that's where we got into trouble this time, was trying to box him in and make him a safety.
I agree.
Just play him all over, man.
Especially if you're going to play him in the middle of your defense, which is probably where he's best served, because that's where turnovers come on defense.
Yep.
And that's what I'm even saying as a Jet fan. As good as the seasons they had, they need somebody that can cause turnovers in the middle of that defense. But I think the Panthers already have that player, so it's just got to be used correctly. And I'm sure the right defensive coordinator will get that done. All right, so. What about some of the other players that we talked about early on, including the rookies? Because just taking a look overall, Brandon Smith, 4th rounder, Barno, didn't expect him to do much his first year anyway. So were these guys just kind of redshirt players that you didn't really anticipate were going to have much of an impact this year, but you're definitely expecting them to be a part of this defense next year?
Yeah, I think when I came on here, we talked about after the draft. I said that this draft class was going to be a wait and see draft class. These guys, they were depth guys. This was a depth draft, and we shouldn't look at them other than outside of Icky. We shouldn't look at any of them as day one starters, and they're going to be impactful guys. I think Barno did have a couple of solid plays towards the end of the season once he got on the field. I do have high expectations for Brandon Smith at some point.
Okay.
Brandon Smith is super athletic. He can be, and I hate comparisons because we always go to the highest. We never go to like a realistic comparison. Yeah. We always go to the highest guy, and I think he could be a Micah Parsons style edge rusher because he's that athletic.
Okay.
And he obviously the Penn State connections. So I think he could be our Micah Parsons if he bulked up. He's a bit smaller. But if he bulked up and was able to put a hand in the dirt every now and then, he's a very, very good athlete. Very good athlete. So I would want him to be out there and be a tweener outside linebacker. That's why I think 3-4 kind of suits us a little bit better.
Okay.
I think that's where he could fit. But again, those guys, there were no expectations for them to come out there and be elite players from the jump.
And speaking of edge rushers, if you look at it, and of course, Matos and Haynes.
Yeah.
It's like they just haven't been able to get enough pressure from those guys outside of Brian Burns. So that has to be maybe the number one, or definitely one of the top 2 or 3 needs of the team, right?
It's number 2. It's number 2 on my list.
Two?
If I'm writing down the needs for the Carolina Panthers, and you can book this on the site. Number 2 need is edge rusher. We need one badly. Badly. We have not figured it out outside of Burns. We had it. And I just posted this on Twitter yesterday. We had it with Hassan Reddick.
Yeah, I know.
And let him walk. We let him walk, man. We had it. We had a nice pair of edge rushers, and we let him go. And kudos to him because he's probably going to get a ring here soon. But, I can't blame him for walking. But we had it, and we let him. We had 2 double-digit sack guys. Hadn't had that since Greg Hardy and Charles Johnson. It's been that long since we had 2 double-digit sack guys. And it's unfortunate. So we need to get another edge rusher. Hopefully, since we're about to shell out a huge bag for Brian Burns, it's imperative that we draft one. So that's where I'm at with it.
And you don't think that, speaking of the future contracts, so because we talked about this as well, Thompson, Burns, and Brown, they need extensions. Do you think all 3 of them are going to get it? Or do you think Thompson might be the guy that they might have to let go?
Yeah, so Burns is definitely getting extended because we can't make the same mistake twice. You just let Hassan walk, and I don't. And listen, there are valid critiques of Brian Burns. They all do. I get it, but you cannot let him walk. You have to pay him whatever, and it's gonna be a nice size contract. Sure. It's gonna be probably 20 plus mil per year. And Derek Brown, we can get his 5th-year option. Okay. So that should be done this year. Okay. We should be declaring that pretty soon. And then Shaq. Now, Shaq is one that could be a casualty, right? You bring in a new coach, have a new scheme. If they could see things differently, Shaq. I like Shaq Thompson. Sure. I think when you look at linebacker play, it's all predicated on what happens up front. If your up front isn't playing that great, then your linebacker play is not going to be that great. And so I think that's what we've seen. Now I'll say this too: Frankie Louvu has come in and he's done an amazing job. He has. We love Frankie Louvu, done an amazing job. And so does that make Shaq expendable? I don't know. But if we do let Shaq walk, understand this: it creates a major gap because we already need interior linebackers, and to let him go would be tough.
Absolutely, no question. Because he's going to play his final year, right? Because the dead money is like 11 mil I saw out of the 12 he's earning, so they're not going to screw around with that contract, right?
Yeah, we have voided years attached to his contract. So you never know though. You never know when it comes to these guys, especially when you got a new coach. Yep. New coach to come in and say, but Shaq is a leader on this team. I actually expect him to get extended personally. Okay. He's 29 years old. He's in his prime. An extension does help with the cap situation that we're in. So rather than cutting, I expect him to get extended.
By the way, spoke about off the air before we did this about how some of our viewers were wondering where you were on our channel. Trill actually talked about he was mentioning a conversation because on our show we were talking about the cap because we were going over the draft needs and the free agency, and the cap situation didn't look all that great. But as we had talked about the last year or two, that they've actually been slowly getting on the right side of the cap. It's not an overnight process. But Trill mentioned that you guys had actually just spoke about that you just must have had a show recently that went over the cap issues and you broke it down. So not enough in a 30 or 60 minute show, but in just a few minutes, tell us how that looks right now, the cap situation. I can see where the numbers are, but again, numbers can be numbers. They're always going to be manipulated in the offseason. You never know how the GM is going to do it, but he has a plan. So what do you think the Panthers' plan is right now for the cap?
Yeah, so for right now, and I did the reason why it came up because I just dropped a video yesterday talking about the cap. I literally just did it yesterday. So I dropped it, and right now the Carolina Panthers are $8 million over the cap, right? That includes the new increase that they just announced. We're $8 million over the cap. And if we all understand, and this is my thing, I'm not an X's and O's guy per se. I know a little bit, but the cap, that's what I enjoy. I love the offseason, the cap. So this is what I enjoy to do. So basically, the Carolina Panthers, the way I did it yesterday, I got the Carolina Panthers about $40 million under the cap. And how I did that was I extended DJ Moore. Excuse me, not extended. I restructured DJ Moore.
Okay.
Right? DJ Moore he just got an extension. He has a lot of base salary that you can convert to signing bonus, and that's what I did. So I converted DJ Moore, dropped that down by like 10 something odd million. Taylor Moton can also be restructured. Shaq Thompson, I extended Shaq Thompson. Brian Burns, you can extend Brian Burns. He's on his 5th-year option right now. His 5th-year option year is this year, but you can extend him to reduce that $16 million cap hit. Austin Corbett, he's another guy that can be restructured. Pat Eflin, I cut him because he's more of a depth guy.
Sure.
And I believe with Cade Mays that we just drafted last year, I think he can fulfill that backup center role.
Okay.
And so then there's a couple other things I did. I cut Damian Wilson because Damian Wilson is a linebacker that rarely played. I don't think he's worth the contract he's on. And there's a couple other things you can do, like restructure Xavier Woods. There's a couple other things, but that's ultimately how I got us to under about $40 million under the cap, and then you reserve $10 million of that for your rookies, and you're sitting at about $30 million in cap space, and that's what I got.
Okay, and I'm assuming that you've done this in previous years to know that this could be a pretty workable scenario.
Absolutely. In fact, I anticipate 75% of what I said actually happened.
It's going to happen. Okay,
it's cool. Going to happen because here's the thing with the restructure game. Like once you start it, it's almost impossible to stop.
Yeah.
At some point, you have to pay the piper, right?
That's right.
So I go back to the Saints. The Saints are notorious they're like $80 million over the cap, and then they miraculously get under the cap. And this is how they do it. It's through restructures. And so at some point, they end up having to pay Drew Brees like $20 million in 1 year when he retired because that's the name of the game.
Yeah. At
some point, you have to pay the piper. But I think right now we're in a window the next 4 to 5 years where it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
You go all, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this. I'm not going to spoil it, but I'm sure you go all in on where you got to go and just keep restructuring these guys. And at some point, you do some extensions and you can keep it. You can keep it going. But once you start it, it's impossible to stop because it's a big price to pay.
Yeah, it's just like the economy in general.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it's everybody knows if you have a credit card how that works. Okay, so let's go over the obvious question is at quarterback once again, but Matt Corral, 3rd-round draft pick. Unfortunately, it was a big blow that you couldn't get the kid on the field at some point. But so far, has anything been said? Reich came in. Was he asked about Corral?
Actually, he was asked about the quarterbacks under contract, and he was asked a 2-part question. He answered the first part of the question, and I don't know if he forgot to answer the question, but he conveniently did not answer the question about the current quarterbacks on the roster.
Okay.
He also mentioned that, hey, I think he let it slip that, when you got to draft, essentially the quarterback we draft is what he said, or something to the effect about drafting the quarterback, and then quickly cleaned it up by saying, or the quarterback we decide to bring in free agency.
Okay,
so I think he let it slip. And I think all signs are pointing to us drafting a quarterback. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know who falls because there's one quarterback that falls every single year. The quarterback you think that's going to be drafted top whatever, there's one guy that always falls, and we're picking at 9, and I think we're going to be in that area to pick or trade up to get a guy that we want, and I think it's going to happen this year. One thing about Frank Reich is he's never worked outside of Wentz when he was a coordinator. He's never worked with really a young guy.
Yeah.
He's always worked with the guys he's worked with in the past.
Yes, that has to stop.
Yes. Yeah, Phillip Rivers. He's worked with, and it's not all his fault, right?
Of course.
It's not all his fault. He's got a GM and stuff. Phillip Rivers he's worked with at San Diego. They got him back when he was with the Colts. He worked with Carson Wentz with the Colts as well. Matt
Ryan,
Foles, and Matt Ryan. Well, I don't think he worked with Matt Ryan in the past, but he always is working with the veteran quarterback. But just imagine what he did with Wentz.
Sure.
Right? Wentz was on an MVP track before he got hurt that year. Right? And Wentz is not a good quarterback.
No.
Let's be clear. Sure. Just imagine what he can do with a young mind that he can mold from the start. I think it's going to be dangerous.
And I got to believe that's part of the reason why he's here.
Yep, bingo.
You got to have that marriage of new offensive head coach with his handpicked quarterback.
Yep. And so I feel bad because you brought up Matt Corral. I feel bad for Matt Corral, but I said this was going to happen as soon as we drafted him. As soon as we drafted Matt Corral, I said, guess what? As soon as Matt Rule's fired, he's going to get lost in the sauce.
Yeah.
We've seen it happen. We've seen this happen over and over and over again. When a new coach is hired,
of course,
they're bringing in their quarterback.
Yep.
It doesn't matter how you feel about him.
Sure.
A lot of people, you're forgetting about Matt Corral. No, he doesn't want to be tied to a guy he didn't pick.
Sure.
And I will say this about Matt Corral. I think he's actually perfect for the style of offense that Frank Reich runs, the RPO. That's what he did in Ole Miss. The Lane Kiffin system was all RPO. Hey. So I think he's actually solid, but I'm not going to hedge my bets on a guy that can't stay on the field. He left Ole Miss injured. He's injured here in the preseason, right? Yeah. He can't stay healthy. I'm not putting my eggs in that basket. Go and get me a quarterback, and I'm going to spoil it for you because you may ask me this. I don't care what it takes. If we got to go up to 1 to get Stroud or whatever, I don't care what it takes. You trade what you need to trade. Go up there and get you a quarterback. I don't care. Make it happen. Get us a quarterback.
Well, I would be shocked, to tell you the truth, if the first guy wasn't Bryce Young. I don't think the size is going to be an issue at all, but it could be C.J. Stroud. I see what you're saying, because it's going to take an awful lot to move up to get either guy. The one kid that could drop, though, because I think he's the clear number 3, is Will Levis. So he's the guy, because I think he needs more time than people are saying, because I think there's a lot of those television scouts especially, and they love his arm strength and his athleticism and all that stuff, and he's going to wow everybody during the All-Stars and the workouts. But if you're looking at a guy that could drop, that maybe that's the guy. If you're saying, like you said, that maybe there's a perfect guy that could drop and we can go right into our hands, I could see Levis being that guy. But no matter what, it's going to be a quarterback. And knowing the draft capital the team has this year and next year, how worried are you regarding the type of collateral it's going to take if the team wanted to go up and get either Stroud or Bryce Young?
I don't care one bit, because guess what? If it pays off, nobody's going to care about those picks. I don't care. If you get me a quarterback like C.J. Stroud, I could care less what it costs.
I know, I'm all for that.
I really don't. I don't care what it costs.
Do they have? By the way, do they have the collateral?
So we have an additional second-round pick this year. So we have 2 second-round picks this year.
Okay.
And obviously we're going to have our future first. So you can talk about future capital. So for me, if you're looking at a package, I'm probably looking at our first this year to trade up. Our first next year to trade, which is probably going to be a mid-round pick, to be honest. And then you have an additional second-round pick this year that you can get. Yeah. Yep. So that could do it alone, or you can add another second-round pick next year. Listen,
or you could throw Matt Corral in the deal.
Or you could throw whatever it takes.
Sure.
I really don't care. Whatever it takes to get the guy. And you brought up Will Levis, and that's a really polarizing name within Panthers Nation, because a lot of people don't like him.
I don't like him either.
So do you? Let me ask you this: is he giving you Zach Wilson PTSD?
Well, Zach Wilson is a big story, considering I'm a Jet fan. But I will tell you that I am actually one of the. And I'm like you. I'm always in the minority. I'm one of the guys that haven't given up on Zach, and that's because he hasn't had the right teacher. And just, it's sort of like if Zach had been drafted by, say, last year's Carolina or this past regime, Matt Rule.
Yeah,
I don't think much would have changed either. And I think you would be defending him like I would. So the fact that he's going to get a really competent teacher now, I think, is going to give him the opportunity. Not that I think he's going to be the number 1 guy next year, but that's a completely different story. I think the problem with Levis is, I think probably what everyone else is seeing, like I said, is that if you really look at if you just watch the way he played even this past year in big spots, he did not perform well. Yeah. He's got a lot of it's almost like Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson has even more talent and freakish ability, but you also know that he's at least a year or two away from starting. He has got to sit on the bench for at least one full season, if not more. That's the other question that then comes into play. If you're a Panther fan, is what do you do if it's a Will Levis or an Anthony Richardson? Those guys are not ready to start right away. So, do you think the Panthers would think about bringing back Sam Darnold for another season?
See, yeah, I hope not, because I don't want to get into this. We've already done that. We've been there. We've done that. We played the veteran game. I'm sick of it. And so this is why I'm saying that I don't care what it takes.
So you want to go after that number 1 or 2 guy?
I want CJ. Who I want is CJ Stroud.
Okay.
Give me CJ Stroud. And if you talk about, there's this article or something that came out talking about the ideal Frank Reich quarterback. And he talked about it a little bit during his press conference. He talked about, in the article it said, I want a 6'3" guy, a bigger guy that can handle some hits if need be, but can also run the football. People has this misconception that CJ Stroud can't run. And I'm like, are you dumb? Like, this man can run the football.
Yeah.
If he needs to run, he can run. Like, he can run. And we saw it in the Georgia game, the national championship game. Yeah. He put the team on his legs. The reason why he does not have to run is because he has elite wide receiver play beside him. There's no need for me to put myself in danger. Why? For what? Right? And so he can run the football. And I feel like Reich, he wants a mobile quarterback, but he also wants a quarterback that can beat you from the pocket. He said that. That's what he said. We've got to be able to stretch the field. And there is nobody that throws a better pretty football than CJ Stroud in this draft. Bryce Young, debatable, right? Bryce Young is a great quarterback. I like Bryce Young, and I don't believe in the small. I think that's overstated. I think he can play in the league. So whether he goes first, cool. But CJ Stroud is the guy that I want, and I've been on record day one saying that's the guy I want. He's perfect. He's perfect for what we need.
Well, the thing is that considering we know Chicago is going to be taking all those phone calls, the question is, though, who could that be? So if Carolina's on the phone and they're trying to figure out a way to trade up with Chicago, well, what if another team trades up with Chicago, but they want Bryce Young? Now, that might be a better scenario for Carolina because now you don't have to go all the way up to number 1. And you could still get a pretty good player, but again, you'd have to still go. Not saying that. I mean, one other spot is really not going to change things because what happens is that of course Houston is sitting there, and more than likely you would guess that they're going to wind up either with the second guy, or maybe they even move up a spot to make sure they get the first guy.
Yeah. So it needs to be. They need to be talking Chicago, and the good news is that Scott Fitterer mentioned that. They talked to him, our GM, they interviewed him the same day that Reich had his press conference, and he mentioned it. He said, we're in position to now get a quarterback. And here's why that's important, because I said the same thing I've been saying this for years, right? You have to set the quarterback up for success. And right now, the Carolina Panthers have a wonderful top 10 offensive line for this man to sit back and play behind. He has a decent weapon in DJ Moore.
Yep.
He has a very good run game, right, which we saw this year when Wilkes took over, and Foreman and Chuba. Well, we've got to re-sign Foreman, and there's some work we got to do because we got to re-sign Bozeman as well to complete this. But if we get him another solid weapon at wide receiver, there's some guys I like that Terrace Marshall is solid, but I think you could improve. You can get another good weapon at wide receiver, and you get him a good tight end. If you can get him a good tight end,
that's
you're gonna set this quarterback up for success day one. Because guess what? The defense already is going to be solid.
Sure.
The defense is going to keep you in games.
Yeah,
but now surrounded with all this talent, now is the perfect time. And I've been against it because of the scenario. It's not the right time. It's not time to trade up. We don't have an offensive line. We don't have the weapons. We don't have the coaching. We don't have any of this. It's not don't do it. But right now, we have the coaching, in my opinion.
And you got the
coordinators
personnel.
aside.
Yep.
And we got the personnel. Now is the right time to trade all the assets. I don't care what it takes. Go get the quarterback, and we're going to be a successful team. I'm telling you, this is the year. This is the year. If we do it right, this is the year.
Yeah, because if you look at it, the other teams that you're competing against, well, you're definitely competing against Indianapolis, you would think.
Yep.
Even though you never know with the Colts, because as we just talked about, they're in this fascination with veteran quarterbacks all the time. So you just don't know what the Colts are thinking. But you would guess that that's going to be one team that is definitely going to be looking to trade up to get one of those guys. So that's going to be the battle there. And look, you're right. You have the ammunition. It's just a matter of how much of it are you going to have to give up. But you can't lose this battle. You just can't. You can't look at it
whatever it takes.
Yeah, you can't sit there and be bought out because the Colts jumped you and they offered more. And Houston sits at 2 and takes the other guy, and then you're looking and you're going, we got beat again.
Yeah.
Again.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. I'm on record, man. I want CJ Stroud.
I have
dreaming
no problem
of
with
CJ Stroud in a Panthers jersey.
That.
That's what I want.
The reason that I think Stroud is a more complete quarterback. I think the thing that makes Bryce Young special is that he has that extra, like, and I'm so sick of hearing everybody compare like these quarterbacks in the last couple of years. Hey, he's got Patrick Mahomes in him. But if there's actually a quarterback that does, it's Bryce Young. He can make plays out of nowhere.
Yeah, he's smart.
Stroud is definitely a guy that is not like the old Ohio State quarterbacks. He is a much more complete quarterback, and I think that's going to be a knock that you can just get rid of. He's not going to fail. He's going to have a successful NFL career. So I'm right there with you. I think you're set up either way, no matter which guy you get. But I hear you. If you want CJ Stroud, then I have no problem with that. All right. So taking a look, you mentioned the center position. So they have to re-sign Bozeman. And is that pretty much it? Then that would pretty much complete the offensive line for another season?
That would complete. Everybody else is under contract. Austin Corbett's under contract. Taylor Moton is our franchise rock at right tackle. Then we got Brady Christensen is playing. He's obviously on a rookie deal. He did have a pretty bad injury at the end of the season, but should be fine going into next season.
Okay.
And then we have Ickey, obviously a rookie left tackle. So yeah, Bozeman is the only piece we need, and actually we have some solid depth too in Cade Mays. Cade Mays is a rookie that we drafted last year and he actually played a lot of fullback this year. They lined him up at fullback. Okay. And I think he's a solid piece, a solid depth piece.
Is he going to so he's not going to start, you think? Will Corbett end up starting again?
No, I think Corbett's the guy. Corbett had a really good season. Corbett had a good season. So I think the offensive line is set. If we got to just get back Bozeman and we're good to go there.
Okay, so and then when I look at the wide receiver position, I do see, like you mentioned, Marshall, but I'm also a Chenault fan. So I see that there's talent. I actually think that the talent will become more evident when you have proper coaching and a quarterback play. So honestly, I don't think they have to spend big or draft big for a wide receiver. So I think they're legit. Like I agree with you. I'd rather look for that number 1 tight end before I even look for like a number 2 or number 3 receiver. I think they could live with what they have. But the question is at running back. So do you think that even if they re-sign Foreman, which I can't believe it's going to be a big expense, because if he wants a lot of money, which I'd be surprised if he did, you should be able to bring him back. Do you still believe that you should try to go out and get another running back? Or do you feel, sign Foreman, I have Hubbard, we're okay?
Yeah. So I do think, which is interesting, I do think we could add another running back, have a triple-headed monster. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think Nyheim Hines is going to be a free agent. He's a guy that, I could be wrong on that, so don't quote me. But if he's a guy that's available, that he gives you that gadget ability out of the backfield, he's a guy that has a relationship with Reich. I would look to bring him in alongside of Hubbard and Foreman. But I want to bring back Foreman too. Foreman's a battering ram. He's a really good player. People are scared to tackle him, so I need to bring back Foreman.
Yeah, Hines is still. He's got another couple of years on his deal.
Okay, my bad.
And it's pretty cheap too, so I doubt Buffalo. But then again, you never know. They could always decide to let him go if they have to. Because I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case, because that's one thing Buffalo has to do, because Singletary's a free agent. And what are they going to do? So they could very well have just brought Hines in for like a rental in a way, and then maybe they'll just let him go. Okay, so yeah, because I agree with you, Foreman and Hubbard, but if eventually either this year or next year, I think the team should want to try to go out and get a more dynamic running back, like a true number one, somebody that could really be a top guy. But you can get those guys anywhere.
Yeah, and we had a dynamic running back, and I'm cool. Our offense was great without him, so I'm okay with what we have. Just run the football, and people have a misconception with Reich. They like to run the football in Indianapolis, so they run the football.
Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor. Yeah, so I think whatever quarterback or whatever running back we get, I think it's gonna be good for Foreman or Hubbard. I think Hubbard is starting to become that dynamic running back you speak of. He's starting to come into his own. He had a really hard time with his hands. He's starting to develop some hands and can catch the football on a consistent basis. And with that, I think he could be that dynamic running back you speak of.
By the way, do you like any of the backup receivers, the guys past the top three? Any of those guys?
I mean, no. So not.
Shy
I mean, not really.
No.
Yeah, no. I'm good on Shy. Okay. I mean, they're okay. I mean, they'll give you a spell or two here and there, but no. I think Terrace is gonna come into his own. And I obviously love DJ Moore. And then Chenault, like I agree with what you said. I think Chenault was only used. He basically had one play that we ran through him last year, and it worked a couple of times. He sprung 2 touchdowns off the same play. But that's basically all we did with him was run one play.
Frank Reich could figure out a better way to get him involved.
Exactly. So I think that Chenault could be our Deebo Samuel. So that's what I'm looking forward out of him.
Okay. And then on defense, defensive tackle, edge rush. And what about that secondary? Because, again, Chinn's going to be a part of it, and J.C. Horn will hopefully be healthy. But outside of those two, who else should we be optimistic about, or where do you see the glaring hole at in the secondary?
Yeah, so I think you need to get a CB2. We've kind of been playing around with it. Listen, man, I like C.J. Henderson. I don't want to give up on him because he's still on a rookie deal. But man, he had some pretty egregious plays last year. So I'm looking to get another cornerback. I know I've done a lot of mock drafts. And I always tend to land on a corner in the second round. If I can land on like a Ringo or something like that in the second round, that would be great because we do need another cornerback to play alongside of JC. I think that's critical. Safeties, I think, are cool. I like Woods. I think Woods is better than what we've had here. And if you're going to move Chinn around, you probably need to draft another safety.
Absolutely.
So I think, I say probably safety and then another cornerback, but we don't need to knock it. We don't need to make a huge swing. But if we can get another guy there, that's probably what I would do.
Okay, and then if there is a trade, which is very possible, and they give away their first round pick, and let's say they give away one of their second rounders, and that they still have that second round pick as their early pick for this year. You think it's going to more than likely go corner or edge rusher?
Correct. Okay. I think it's going to be corner or edge rusher, and my dark horse for that pick would probably be tight end.
Yeah. Okay.
If like a Darnell Washington or somebody's there, the kid Kincaid.
Oh, that kid's going to be awesome.
He's there. Yeah. If I know it's a long shot, but if he's there in the second round, I wouldn't be mad if they took it on, used it on.
And we know Frank Reich wants tight ends, so especially guys. Who's the best blocking? Do you have a good blocking tight end on the team?
Yeah. Tommy Tremble out from Notre Dame a couple years ago. He's a really good blocking tight end. Ian Thomas, they're both solid blocking tight ends. That's all we have is blocking tight ends. We don't have it. We don't have an elite wide receiver threat or elite passing tight end yet on our.
And how's special teams? Because I see you have all your guys are except for the punter is a free agent, correct?
Yeah. No, we're good on special teams. I think that Zane Gonzalez probably bring him back. He started rough but closed out our kicker. He used to close out the season strong, so probably bring him back. Special teams I think we're gonna be fine. JJ Jansen, he's about 50 years old, but he'll be back.
And Roberts,
and then
you bring him back?
We don't need Andre Roberts. That was dead weight. I think you train up another guy that can be a punt returner.
Okay.
But yeah, no, Roberts doesn't move the needle for me.
All right. So before I let you go, Rashad, so again, what are you up to with your channel? Again, the YouTube channel, you're close to 20,000 subscribers?
Yep, we're close to 20,000. We're about 1,500 subscribers away. So that's the push. We would like to get to 20,000 before the draft, or right at the draft, or on the draft. That would be super cool. So yeah, that's what we're up to, man. We got a lot of good stuff coming along the way. More player interviews. We're working on something right now with Steve Smith Sr., the greatest Carolina Panther of all time. Trying to do some draft content with him.
Great.
So stay tuned for that. And obviously Dave has his fantasy show, so he'll be prepping fantasy and stuff like that for you all next year. But we working, man. We're working, same stuff. We're just, provide good content.
Well, you guys do a great job, and I'm always happy to have you on here, educating me on what's going on in Carolina. And I have a feeling that sometime before the draft, you and I are going to talk again about a big trade.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's a trade up to get CJ Stroud. That's what I'm hoping.
There you go.
But yeah, so yeah,
keep those positive vibes going.
Hey, I'm happy. All Panthers fans right now should be in a good space. You look at the landscape of NFC South; it's open for the taking. Excuse me, and we are right in the. We're right there. Yes. I think we're one of the better teams with Tom Brady finally gone. All the quarterbacks in the NFC South are trash. And so I think we're going to be – I think we're right there. We're right there. I think it's ours for the taking. We have a young team. We have a hungry team. And I think we're going to do it. I think the division's about to be ours for the next couple of years.
I'm looking forward to talking to you more about the Panthers coming up soon. And best of luck, and I agree with you. I think this is going to be a good time to be a Panther fan. So, Rashad, appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Sounds good. Thank you.
Got it.